He got a summer job in Mississauga, straight out of university, in 1956, and he ended up staying here over 35 years. Jerry Love, Mississauga's first recreational director, noticed a need for programs during March break. He realized parents were not at home because they were busy working and that single parents were becoming more common. He started the Children's Fund in 1985 because parents asked him to eliminate or reduce the fees for recreational programs since they had trouble making ends meet. This year, the Jerry Love Children's Fund will have helped 10,000 youngsters. He started it with nickel and dimes and has never asked nor received funding from the government. And to think, if he had listened to his high school guidance counselor, he may never have ended up going to the University of Toronto and studying physical education, the program that led him to a summer job in Mississauga. Find out why the mayor renamed the Children's Fund. Find out where Jerry Love has worked out every week for the last 40 years. Join me, Bina Pandya, as I talk one-on-one with Jerry Love right after this break. Welcome back to One-on-One. I'm your host, Bina Pandya, and joining me, I have Jerry Love. Jerry, welcome to One-on-One.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here.
Well, Jerry, although you've been a long-time Mississauga resident, you didn't grow up here, did you?
I grew up in Toronto. Went to school in Toronto and then the University of Toronto.
When you were growing up in Toronto, what sort of a childhood did you have?
Well, I think it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
We lived across from a high school, so it was very convenient to get over there and use the outdoor facilities there to play a little bit of ball.
So sports, was it always a big part of your life growing up?
Yes, it was, and we were also very close to the YMCA in Toronto, within walking distance.
Mm-hmm.
So that was great. We could spend a lot of time there, and actually on a Saturday I would be down there the whole day.
What, did you have a particular sport you had a passion for or anything?
Well, we played a lot of basketball and floor hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Won a city championship in floor hockey, actually, and I was in the leader corps there. So that was very interesting. And as I say, Saturday would be a full day at the Y for me in those days. I would be maybe 12 or 13 at the time.
Can you tell me, growing up as a child, obviously you're very active in sports. To you at that time, what did sports give you?
Well, it gave me an opportunity to learn some new skills, to meet some new people, and to sort of get a feeling for what life is all about. I think sport can do that for you, and it can do that for your entire life, really.
Well, when you went on to post-secondary education, where did you go and what did you decide to study?
I went to the University of Toronto in physical and health education. That was the first school in what they called the British Commonwealth that had such a program, as a matter of fact. And it was a very challenging course, and was very, very interesting. Met all kinds of new people. There was virtually none of my high school friends were in that crowd down there. We had all sort of scattered at various universities.
Well, given that it was a new program, it was something that was not sort of very common. What were you hoping to do with this degree?
Well, practically everybody at that time, this is the early 50s, went into teaching. Practically everybody.
Is that what you were thinking of doing?
Well, yes, I was thinking of teaching. But actually, we had I think at least two people in our year, and keeping in mind that the classes were really small. I think we had 18 men and 17 women. Some of your viewers will wonder about that with today's large situations. But two of the people, one of them went into law, and one became a medical doctor. But the thing is that they did this purposely. They knew right from the start that's what they were going to do.
Right. And then how did you land up in Mississauga? It wasn't even Mississauga at the time you ended up here, was it?
Yeah. It was called the Township of Toronto, actually until 1968. And It was a confusing title. Actually, when I was dating my wife, she asked me well, where I worked, and of course it didn't mean anything. I mean, when you say Township of Toronto, the first thing they think about is the city, which
Yes.
is where we all lived, and it had nothing to do with the city of Toronto. So I was very glad for that name change in '68. But
What was your first job here in Mississauga, though?
I came here for a summer job in 1956, and I stayed for 35 and a half years.
You
It
must
was
have really
as simple
liked
as
your
that.
job.
Yeah, well, I thought it was a good opportunity. I mean, there was maybe 45,000 people here at the time, a very large area, very much of it totally undeveloped, especially down the western side where you now have Meadowvale and Erin Mills. And it just seemed like a good opportunity. And so when it came along, I was very honored to remain with the township.
What was your official job title at that time?
Well, eventually I became assistant director. I think they called everybody assistant director, I think, in those days.
Assistant director of what?
Of recreation. Yes. But my main portfolio was sports and physical activity, and that's in fact what we did. Actually, another fellow and I from University of Toronto both came here for a summer job. Our job was to run the sport programs on the playgrounds, in the playground system they had here.
Well, you were one of the fortunate few that sort of what you studied in university, you were able to find a job right away in your field.
Well, that's true, yes. But I mean, I always had a great interest in sport, and when I had the opportunity to come here and teach some youngsters in this summer program, I did that. But actually, we were sort of a bit of a jack of all trades. I mean, we did some lifeguarding at Arundel Park. Now, if you know that area, you'll say, well, what's that all about? There's a broken dam there, and there was a swimming area.
Well, Jerry, we're going to hold that thought there, and we'll be back right after the break to carry on with Jerry Love. Welcome back to One on One with Jerry Love. Well, Jerry, you were saying just before the break that you were sort of jack of all trades. You ended up being a lifeguard. What sort of vision did you have for the whole sports community in the Mississauga area and youth?
Well, you have to understand what was available at the time, which wasn't very much. Now, the Minor Hockey League was actually celebrating their 10th anniversary. I mean, so that was a well-founded group. But there wasn't very much other sport. There was a little bit of girls softball and boys hardball.
What were you hoping to do?
Well, I thought that there was a good opportunity with my physical education background to get involved with all the sport leagues and all the physical activity groups. We had Ladies Keep Fit, for instance. We had tap and ballet programs and all those kind of things. They were actually going on when I was here, and I tried to add a little bit of my expertise to those particular programs.
What sort of support did you get from the community for your initiatives?
Mississauga and its predecessors has always been great with volunteers. I mean, you know that because you deal with them in your own job here with Rogers. And it's always been that way. So we had a good mix, I think, of staff and community volunteers, and we were able to put together a lot of these programs and activities.
What are some of the programs that you put together?
Well, we got lacrosse going, including for girls. You know, we've always had the feeling here, if somebody wants to do an activity, our response is, why not? And so we try to make it happen with the volunteers.
What age group were you trying to cater to?
Well, if you're starting a sport league, you really need to start at a fairly young age, and of course that is a pretty hot topic. And actually, I think that in many cases the youngsters start too early. I believe that in the very young years, say around 5 to 8 or 10, they should be concentrating on the basic skills of the game, not being concerned about being on teams and winning and losing and all that kind of thing, because they can actually get more activity and more instruction in the learning environment. I'm talking about, soccer clinics and lacrosse clinics and that sort of thing.
Well, these lacrosse clinics, where were they run, and were they available then to everybody?
Well, we did have our share of outdoor facilities, although you might be interested to know that when I arrived in 1956, we had 13 parks. Now, I believe there's around 500 today.
So it's a slight increase there.
13 parks. And so, we had a few tennis courts. We had some ball and soccer facilities, and that was about it. 1962 was the first outdoor pool built over in West Acres Park, and it's still there today. But then Huron Park came along, a recreation center, opened in 1967, and that provided all kinds of opportunities, because you now had facilities there where you could operate on a year-round basis. For instance, it was the very first indoor swimming pool and the very first fitness center.
How did you deal with the increase in the population with Mississauga and the explosive growth as that continued on?
Well, I don't know if you want to talk about developers' levies, but I mean, we were pioneers in this municipality, along with a few others in those days, because this is exactly the challenge that we faced. Everybody knew that there was going to be tremendous growth in this area. And the question was, how do you fund the growth?
Well, Jerry, right after the break, we'll find out the answer to your question. We'll be back with Jerry Love. Welcome back to One-on-One with Jerry Love. Well, Jerry, now give us the answer to your question as how you dealt with the growth in the city.
Well, we had to figure out how we're going to pay for the growth. And the way we saw it, there were two ways to do it. One was to levy it on the existing residents, and the other was to let growth pay for itself. Well, that sounds like a very simple question to respond to, and that's exactly what we did. We worked with the political people and the developers and all the other departments. The developers' levies were for all services. Okay. Libraries, fire halls, roads, sewers, everything, including the recreation and parks facilities. So that's really what happened there. And I mean, those have served this municipality very well over the years, because to this day you have no debt in the city of Mississauga. And the political people are very, very proud of that fact. And I think it was, working as a team and trying to put these things together. And believe me, we didn't really know what we were doing.
Well, obviously you did a very good job, and a lot of kids have gotten a lot of enjoyment by all the summer clinics that you've put together. But, your work didn't stop there. Then came the Jerry Love Fund. Tell me about that fund and how it came about.
Well, it's one of these things that, there's no defining moment. But basically what happened was, every once in a while, one of the ladies from our registration unit in Recreation and Parks would come running into my office and say, we have a lady at the counter or on the phone who would like to know if there's any financial assistance available. Right. Well, if you know anything about municipal government, we don't have any authority to either reduce or eliminate fees. These fees are recommended by staff on an annual basis and approved by council. And so when this happened a few times, we were getting the message that there are some youngsters and their families that could not afford the programs.
That must have been heartbreaking for you.
Well, yeah, our motto is every child needs recreation. So therefore, we just took it upon ourselves and said, well, what can we do to solve this? And really, we started with nickels and dimes. I mean, running raffles and draws around the office. I mean, everybody does that, right? And in this case, what we would do is just throw the money into a pot somewhere, and then when we had the requests, we would look after the youngsters. And we ran, theater nights and all kinds of different things. But I mean, the problem was that there's no end to the youngsters that need help.
There's obviously a huge demand. So how do you deal with that now?
Well, now we're more involved with corporate groups, service clubs. We have individual donations. We even have an employee deduction plan. So we've tried to dream up every possible means of funding. We're still a very small group in terms of finances compared to a lot of the fundraising, but keep in mind that we have never ever even requested nor received any government funding from any level. So there's no tax dollars involved. It's all straight fundraising and donations.
Well, I know this fund was created in your honor because of your dedication to sports and, the city of Mississauga and all the hard work. And I believe Madam Mayor Hazel McCallion, named it after you. How many children do you think you are, or your fund is helping a year approximately?
Well, we handle anywhere up to 500 to 800 youngsters over the years. But the figure that I like is that since we started in 1985, we've handled over 10,000. Now, those are youngsters that would not have participated in these leadership and recreation programs at all, probably because of their financial limitations.
Okay, Jerry, just hold that thought for a second. We'll be back right after the break with Jerry Love. Welcome back to One-on-One with Jerry Love. Jerry, can I ask you, do you think children participating in sports now has become very expensive and it's really something that's only accessible for parents that have the financial means?
Well, it can be, but we need to be resourceful, all of us, as parents or grandparents. And there are many, many activities that youngsters, or in fact the entire family, could participate in at very little or no expense. I mean, there's lots and lots of facilities all over the city, outdoor facilities that are available, especially during the daytime and usually in the weekends as well, because a lot of the sport leagues do not operate then. Mm-hmm. I think we need to take more advantage of them. But not only the sport facilities, I mean, there's bicycle paths, for instance, which can be used for the cyclists or the runners. I mean, you have the marathon going through the city, so obviously people should be aware that there's, lots of these free facilities around.
So really nobody has an excuse for not staying fit.
That's my opinion.
Now, I understand in 1991 you were inducted into the Mississauga Sports Hall of Fame. How did that come about?
Well, it was a big secret and a big surprise because I'm the chairman of the awards committee.
Well, shouldn't you know what's going on?
Yeah, exactly. Were they trying to get rid of me or what? Anyways, we at that dinner in 1991, I introduced all of the award winners, including the Hall of Fame inductees, and then Ian Scott leaped up and introduced me as an inductee. So that was quite a thing, and actually my whole family was there.
What was your first reaction when you found out?
It was quite an amazing situation for me, because I had been doing all these introductions for a number of years and actually still do them now, and so it's a real treasure as far as I'm concerned.
Of all the accomplishments that you've managed so far, which is the one that stands out in your mind the most?
Well, I'm not too sure. To me, it's gratifying that the people and corporate groups and service clubs and everybody else have stepped forward to support the Children's Fund. I mean, the reason I say that is that we sort of did this as seeing a need, and today a lot of people think it's a good cause, and so that's what really spurs me on. It motivates me and a lot of the people around the city as well. I don't know if that's the greatest accomplishment, but the fact of the matter is that somehow or other we've been able to carry on with the Children's Fund for 22 years now, and it doesn't look like it's going to end. And actually, just as a small side note, we will hit $1 million this year in fundraising over the years.
I mean, that's a lot of money.
It is.
How do you stay fit these days?
Well, I still go to Huron Park. They're celebrating this year a 40th anniversary, as you know. It's essentially almost a brand new facility except for the pool and the arena. But it actually opened 40 years ago, and yeah, I'm still there. 40 years later, I try to get in there 3 days a week, and I also go to fitness class every once in a while with my wife at a private club. But Huron Park was the flagship building, and a lot of things happened out of Huron Park, and I think motivated all of the other communities in Mississauga to try to have similar facilities, and that's in fact what they have today. I think the staff and the politicians that are still around have done a super job on maintaining the level of service for recreation in parks. I mentioned the number of parks before,
Yes,
and the trails and everything.
you have. And you know what, Jerry? You've also done a fantastic job, and you're a role model to all of us that we have no excuse for not staying fit. Thank you for being here on 101.
It's been my pleasure. Mississauga's provided great opportunities for me and everybody else here as well.
That wraps up another episode of 101. I hope to see you here next time.
Venus Clothing was provided by Nygaard, located at 6075 Mavis Road in Mississauga. 101 was videotaped on location at Ethan Allen, located at 2161 Dundas Street West in Mississauga.